Well, hi folks, it's the Love Foundry. I'm JD, and Taylor and Seb are off and about places doing things that the season of the year requires. So I'm going to do a quick online with you guys and explain something that is kind of a bit of a confusion to most people. Now, this is something I want you to do in your consciousness while you're listening to what I'm saying. I don't know how you're going to do that, but I'm going to try to lead you in that. And this is the difference between love and wisdom. This is a very important distinction, and it needs to be understood by us if we're going to function in these arenas. And we have a lot of stuff in the world that's controversial about all of this. So don't get caught up in the Buddhist idea of what wisdom is, or the Christian idea of what love is. Just accept that this is a dual aspect of life itself. Life flows into the world, and it has three major aspects in our basic trinity. And these are what are called revealed aspects, stuff that's already been shown to life to use to make its way. That doesn't mean life doesn't have many more unrevealed aspects, which I'm certain it does. And we'll talk about one of them a little bit if we have time today. But revealed aspects are will. We have will. We know what to do with it. We see everything in nature has a will. Earthworms have a will. People do. So the other aspect that's been revealed, completely revealed, is intelligence. Intelligence is everywhere. Chemistry works throughout the universe. And we can assume by looking at the material world and how well it functions, chemically speaking, intelligently speaking, flowers have intelligence, animals do, humans do. Now, we must assume that higher intelligence, that which has evolved beyond the stages of mineral and plant and animal and human, must assuredly have intelligence as well. So it's available. It's an available aspect of life for us to use to do things with. Now, the third aspect that we have is not as absolutely. It's in revelation, so to speak. And that would be love, wisdom. They come together as a package, back to back, like two sides of a coin. One is not better than the other, and one does not exist without the other. They simply are two parts of one life expression, which we mostly refer to as love. But there are those that operate in the area of wisdom who think of the whole thing as wisdom and they don't think too much about love. And some of them do, and some of them don't. It was the nature of the Buddha that at the last act of his life, where he sits under the Bodhi tree and perfects his mind to wisdom, it was an experience in the story. Remember, it's a metaphor. In the story, we have the experience of the Buddha being given compassion by a young girl when he was struggling. And that compassion triggered his realization of the duality of this love-wisdom aspect and made the whole thing make sense. So we're going to take that metaphor and we're going to move it into our conversation a little bit, and we're going to understand the world that we live in, 2024, and how important both of these are, and how important it is not to pit one against the other or to assume that one is more important or less important. Now, we can look at this. I'll throw a number of suggestions or ideas out there, but not for you to ponder in your intellect. You can do all of that some other time. Just absorb it and take it in and look at the world, look at life, look at nature, look at everything going on and see how it looks to you in this perspective. Because at some point, you won't figure it out. You will see it. You will see that this is how it works as a unity. And these two aspects of that unity, love and wisdom, are what make the whole thing happen. Now, to look at it from this one perspective, think about it in terms of subjective and objective. The subjective is that which is inside of something. So the inside of a peach has a peach pit in it, which guarantees the future peach trees and the life that's going to continue to live on through the peach. And the external, the objective, is the outside, which can have an outer layer like we do with a physical layer. It can have an inner, softer layer like the emotional body does with us, and it could have an inner layer inside of that, which would be the nature of spirit in us. So we have these qualifications to this peach. But the objective aspect of us, the outer layers, can be mental, emotional, and physical. All three are aspects of the outer part of a human. Because thought seems very subtle, it seems very light and invisible, we think of that as inner. But from that which is inside of that, that's viewed as outer. That's out there in the material world, out there in the outer world, where thoughts are thought and feelings are felt and action is taken. So we're going to consider thought, that's brain thought, not a higher form of thought, which would be intuition or some telepathic rapport out there in the cosmos. We're not thinking about those levels. We're thinking about brain thought, intellectual thought, where knowledge and information are sorted and sifted and categorized. And we're thinking about feelings, which are characterizations of our emotional body, or as they refer to it in the esoteric world, the astral body. And the dense physical, which is gas, liquid, and hard. So that's objective. And that corresponds in our love wisdom aspect to wisdom. It's what happens out here in the world. Love happens out here in the world. It's everywhere, like air. But it's not visible to us everywhere. It's not seen as a qualified aspect of life. It's just life itself as love. The moment we qualify it with intelligence and will, if it contains love, it becomes an external and objective action. And that is wisdom. So if you want to write it down, there's a definition that we're going to be using for wisdom for you to ponder and consider. And that definition is this: wisdom is love applied intelligently with will. All three are necessary, or wisdom does not appear in the action. So, don't eat the yellow snow. If you know what that means, and you say it to somebody, that has all three things in it. So it's a wise statement. You're going to regret it. So telling someone to eat the yellow snow because you want to pull a prank on them doesn't contain the element of love. It just contains intelligence and will. Sure, go ahead, step there, see what happens. Well, it's the point I'm making here is that all three ingredients must be available in the expression. And if they're all three available, really, not theoretically or imaginatively, then wisdom is present every time. Every time. Now, you can substitute emotion for love and it won't work. That's not wisdom, because emotion is not love. So we're looking at wisdom only in the appearance of love. Love will not appear until action is taken on it intelligence is given to the action, and then love appears in the act, demonstrating wisdom, wise action, action that supports living harmoniously in the universe in some way. Now, if you want to find something that hedges that bet with me, okay, I'm not going to argue with you, because there's lots of exceptions that seem like exceptions that if you take them down to cause and effect, you might find they're not. For example, in the heat of combat, you're asking someone to help you do something. Well, you're essentially about a business of harming the enemy, but you're asking them to do something that is constructive to what we're doing, like throw the grenade back. So we're not going to nibble at the edges of rationality here. We're just looking at a concept. Later, if you don't agree with it, that's fine. So let's look at the other side for a moment. Let's look at the love side of love wisdom. The love side of love wisdom is subjective, and it's not expressed until it becomes expressed. Now, if you look at the Buddhists talk about compassion, which is what the Buddha experienced from a young girl who gave him her rice ball because he was starving to death when she helped him, because he was so weak from being an ascetic. Everybody has these statues of Buddha, and he's chubby and round and fat, but we know that these guys were not like that at all. They were ascetics. They were suppressing all desires in their nature. They were using their will to try to find that which lay behind desire, or within it, or however they were conceiving of all that. So most of them were pretty skinny because they're suppressing the very appetites that keep them alive, because it's an appetite. So the Buddha was very hungry, starving, and he went out into a stream to get a drink of water and fell to his knees, and some girl helps him out and sees that he's so hungry he can't stand, so she gives him her daily food that she's carrying. And the act of compassion to him, towards him, by that girl, for no reason whatsoever, she didn't know him, he wasn't part of her tribe or family, he was from a far distant place, but she just spontaneously gave up to him through compassion. That was an act of giving. So it contained within it the quality of love. She was moved by him to do it, and at the heart or some part of her nature. So in receiving that, he completed in his consciousness the reasonable idea that all the action in the world that you take, if it does not contain this additional aspect of compassion, doesn't demonstrate as wisdom. And if it contains this compassion and wisdom is demonstrated, then you are on a path to understanding the nature of love and wisdom, which is the nature of life itself. Because it contains what? All three aspects. Will, she was willing to give. Intelligence, she knew how and what to do, recognizing the symptoms of starvation, and offered it freely. No payment, no nothing in return. Here, take this. This is my food, but you need it more than I do. That act stands free. There's no other side to it. But the act itself is a demonstration of wisdom. It's wisdom because he is a part of the same life she is. And look at how wise an act it was on her part. She's saving one of the greatest beings that ever lived on earth, who's working out a problem all of us are struggling with and have struggled with, which is the nature of the divine life that is in him. Not God specifically, because he was not looking for that. He was looking for something beyond God. And he felt that stepped over into that, a direct relationship to life itself and how it expresses itself through a person. If they include these three qualities, then becomes wisdom. And you, by the act of doing it, are becoming wise. And by becoming wise, what is happening to us. If we continuously practice that way, including love and intelligence and will in every act towards life, we not only become wise, we become perfect love. So this path of wisdom, walked by the Buddha and his disciples, of which there are many, many, many listed in the annals of time and history, and if reincarnation is a truth, that we may have many of us walked. There is that path. And then there is the path of love, which is being demonstrated by another group of disciples of the world through their actions. They're not specifically concerned with wisdom. They're concerned with the other side of that. What is it that makes wisdom work? Well, it's a subjective energy emanating from life, different from will, different from intelligence, different from intellect, different from any other name. And that quality is love. Love itself, a unique and specific energy which is invisible, void of a physical form. Even someone embodying love, like a Bodhisattva or a Christ or someone who is purely a love being, is acting in themselves as a wise expression. In other words, intelligently with will. They're living intelligently with will and love through all their processes, what they eat, what they do, where they go, what they act on. And that demonstrates as love, but it's actually the wisdom you're seeing. You're seeing the wisdom. That's what the person's constantly, moment to moment, demonstrating. And then we know the love is present because it has to be present. And we see it in their actions. We see by what they do that the love is present. So when we look at beings like the Christ, as in expressed through Jesus and as expressed in hierarchical circles, as expressed through Maitreya, who is a Bodhisattva equal to the Buddha, as we see beings expressing the love aspect of this side of the coin, we see a different qualification. Because there can be those people who, without realizing consciously through their own intelligence, the mindfulness of the Buddha, who worked his way to love through intelligence, they just started out with love. And they feel that outgoing compassion towards the world and simply act on it continuously. But they haven't thought it out at all. They haven't charted it out. They're simply moved by what they perceive to be a need of some kind. This is a very powerful motivation. And there are those who are so motivated. And they don't try to explain to you why they're doing it. And I came to the desire to do this particular type of podcast today because I was watching a friend. Well, something a friend sent me. I don't really know the person in the picture, but I consider them a friend. He sent me a video, a podcast that someone's doing, which is really beautifully done. And it's someone explaining a mid-level explanation. I say mid-level meaning more complex explanation of how things work in wisdom, from having studied the Yoga Sutras or Raj Yoga or one of the other yogas. Now, these can be quite complex, just like mathematics can be quite complex. And there's certain mathematics like calculus, which you're just not going to do really well with if you haven't had addition, subtraction, and multiplication. If you've had those, and then you get into a little bit of geometry, the shape of things, and how they relate, then maybe we can get to calculus. So if you're talking about a mid-level Buddhist conversation about wisdom, you might have to have some of this experience. And someone who's a novice in this, which most people are, and I consider myself a novice in that department pretty much, we look at someone having that conversation and they got the blackboard all filled up with all of these things. And you think to yourself, well, that's great. Einstein is freaking amazing and miraculous. And I'm sure glad he did that E equals MC squared thing, but I have no idea what he's talking about. But it must work because the universe is holding itself together like glue. So, and then we think to ourselves, well, shit, do I have to learn all that to become spiritual? And the answer to that is no, you don't. Not at all. Not at all. You might want to. I like the conversation. I think it's fascinating. But I can't devote myself to it. But I can devote myself to love. I can devote myself to expressing wisdom by adding love to my will and intelligence, by my actions guided by my heart. If my heart is moved to care, then I can do that intelligently and I can do it willfully. That doesn't mean I understand all the subtleties of things. And there are many subtleties of things. There are many planes and there are subplanes and there are lives in those planes and subplanes that interact with each other through love. And some of them interact through and will and some through intelligence. And it's a big universe, which the Buddha understands perfectly. And if you want to know something about that intricate relationship of the universe and every life in it, he'd be your boy. He will teach you. And then you will be able to express wisdom under probably any circumstance that you should encounter. Now, if you want, but you're not going to do that until you embrace love. So don't think you can get away with just intellectually understanding what's in all of the Yoga Sutras. You won't. It won't work for you. And you can say, shit, I've done years of study with this Buddhist stuff. How come my stuff isn't working? And that's another story. That's the story of Arasangra, which we will get to at some point, but I don't think we have time today, who was a great Buddhist who decided he wanted Maitreya, who was the master of love, to be his teacher instead of the Buddha or instead of one other type person. Because Maitreya is going to teach you love. If you want Buddha and wisdom, go over there. If you want love, I'll give you that. And then you can put the two together and you'll have love, wisdom. But they are brothers. Don't ever think they're not. And don't let anybody pull you into this divisionary argument about one is better than the other or any of those kind of things. One is something wrong and one is something right because they happen to like one side of the conversation over the other. You can like one side of the conversation. You can like Republicans better than Democrats. A lot of people do. But do you think you can live without both? You're mistaken. You're mistaken. Because one, by their nature, has a stronger grip on a certain part of life's wholeness than the other group. And while they crisscross back and forth and they both have love and wisdom and they have experience and intelligence and emotion and all the things going back and forth, one is definitely more conclusively conservative and the other is definitely more subjective. So you have objective, conservative, and subjective, intuitive love. So those are the two aspects you have. And together, if we act on them in harmony and unity, we could express wisdom. If we don't put those two together, if you think wisdom's going to come out, it'll only be by accident. So think about how these things relate and how you want them to relate in you. Because, of course, we would all say that we want wisdom to be in our every act. We want love to be in our every act. And it can be, but not if you can't accept the opposites in you. All opposites, spirit and matter. So now how do we determine these things? How do we see love over here? Or over here, depending on which hand you and I have this continuous thing of left and right when I'm looking at a screen that reverses me. So this is my left hand. So this is my left hand here, and this is my right. And they look reversed in when I'm looking at myself. So if you want that left hand expression holding love in it, and you want that right hand holding action, and you want this love to be in this action, you're going to have to look over there and go, hey, I want you in what I'm doing. And this over here has to say, well, I want to be in what you're doing. And then you have to overcome all the prejudices, negatives, fears, past conceptions that have kept you apart in order for that to happen. And that's what the world is going through right now. And you're going to have all three demonstrating in the world in front of you. You're going to get that. You're going to get the demonstration of a bodhisattva in the form of Maitreya, embodying Christ consciousness perfectly. That's coming into the world. Why? So that you can witness what it looks like to see both blended completely in one being. He is the Buddha and he is the Christ in one person. Now, that's not taking individuality away from either one of those things. Jesus is around. He's holding the principle of Christ consciousness in him constantly because he earned it, that's for sure. And the Buddha's up here on cloud 17, expressing a relationship to all things that will benefit us on this planet, and busy at work. But everything that he stands for is embodied in his friends' lives that love him. So the beings that come forth to express the Buddha may actually speak as if they were the Buddha, because there's a point at which your own individuality is so blended with that which you are embodying that it seems like there's no difference between the two of you as far as anyone can determine. And I think that happened in the story of Jesus when he was speaking as perfect love. He was speaking as perfect love most of the time because he had it in him. There was no difference between him and it. There are occasions when he's probably speaking for himself, when he's just talking to somebody, saying, let's go over here, let's go over there, let's have this for dinner. But then when he's doing Sermon on the Mount or he's doing some other demonstration of perfect love, performing a miracle perhaps, or doing something there, then this power is flooding and filling him. And he allows the action to be taken with love, perfectly, intelligently, willfully, that releases its powers into the action. And there you get a miracle. There you get the healing. That's how profound love is. So what we're talking about on this podcast is how you release perfect love into your life. Well, there isn't any other kind of love. There's not half perfect love. There's not a shadow of love. Well, maybe a shadow. And emotions are shadows of love, or reflections of love in emotional substance, charged with a certain kind of energy, often not very loving at all. Jealousy is a prime example. So we can charge emotion with feeling, and it becomes a reflection of a certain degree of attachment to something. Remember, all emotions bind us to something, even if we don't like it. Jealousy of someone or something is definitely a binding to it, which is part of the nature of love, but it's a binding charged with a peculiar kind of negative emotion, and that means that it's not love, because love doesn't do that. So if you want to put love in your expression, you're going to have to leave it as it is. You got to take love as it is, and then you got to act with it intelligently, and then you've got to let it become a demonstration of your will. That's our process. Now, how are we going to achieve that goal? It sounds simple. Love applied intelligently with will. How hard could it be? Isolate love in yourself. Identify it. Determine its actual reality in you, because it's there in your awareness. You don't have to go very far to find it. You do have to go somewhere. You have to go above your physical body, you have to go above your emotional body, you have to go above the lower part of your mental body, and then you have to enter the world in which love is a dominant energy. Everything there is already infused with it. And connect with the feeling of it. Get the sensation of it. We can bring it down in you right now. And there it is in you. You have a sense of the presence of love. Now, how are we going to get it out into the space? How are we going to release it through ourselves? By taking action on it with intelligence, holding that contribution of love to our nature. Because we did it. We went and found it. We identified it. Some beautiful golden light pouring down through you. And you know at a certain point that that's love. Not at first, because we don't see it. Love's invisible to us. That's what makes embodying it into you a little bit challenging. How do you embody the invisible? Well, you breathe it in every day with air. That was pretty invisible, but there it is filling your lungs, which is an action of wisdom. And so it's there. Now, what we have to become is conscious that it's there. You have to be aware that it's there. And I can tell you that if you call love down through you, and you'll feel the sensation if we do that together, just I invoke love, poof, down, come on down through. And then tune in your inner senses to a sense of flow, a sense of energy. You will feel it. And when you do, you can say, well, that might be love because you're not very good at it yet. Or the moment it hits you, you go, okay, now that's on. That's on. Now I have to take action with that. You can't take the action and forget it because then it goes back to where it was. And your action is void of love, even though it might be a kind action. I'm going to help this old lady across the street. I'm going to do it with love. So you get all juiced up. Here's love. She's there waiting for the light. And then you go, well, let me help you across the street. And she needs the help, wants the help. It's great. Thanks. Safer. And then you get all caught up in the glamour of you helping some old lady across the street, and somebody over there is watching you and they'll think something good about you, and et cetera, that causes us to just tune love out. Now you still help her across the street. And she gets to the other side and says, thank you. Thank you for helping me across the street. Oh, you're welcome. Happy to do it. But all the distance you went across the street, no love in there at all. It doesn't slop over. It's an odd kind of intimacy with love that it's instantly there and it's instantly gone. Now, there's no law against acting without love, as we see. We see an abundant plethora of actions going on around us all day long, void of love. And when you see all those people zipping up and down the freeway by you and beside you, and you're holding love, you know none of them are doing that. If you invoke love and you're meditating and holding a sense of flow with love while you're driving to go somewhere, to just, you're thinking about things and loving things and being present in your car and being present to love and being present to things that you care about. But everybody around you is just going. They're just going. And you can look at them and know their consciousness is filled with something other than that. Not everyone, of course. Somebody's going to go by and they'll be streaming love out the back. But you know from experiencing yourself and others that most of those cars are being driven by people who are going, oh, God, I hope I'm not late. I hope he's not going to fire me for being 10 minutes late. Am I going to run out of gas before I get there? I wonder if they shut the water off at home. I wonder what the kids are up to. And you see, we fill our head with all of these things at the expense of love because no one taught us from youth that holding love is the primary job. That's your primary job. Put that presence in you. And once it's in you and flowing, you are having a positive impact on the world through every action you take. Because every action you take that has intelligence in it, pumping gas into your car, is going to have love in it because it's what? In you. It's embodied in you. Now, you may think that's not going to have that much effect, but if you try it for a while, you'll begin to see how your life changes, how the shape of your life starts to rise in vibration and rise in its positive impact on others, and how intuitive ideas and thoughts come into you in your conversation that benefit other people. Love is just amazing. It just spills over into everything. It penetrates down into everything you talk to and everything you touch and everything you look at. Love spills there and does things, positive things, harmless things, healing things, helpful things, and in you. So holding it was like, oh, that's a good idea. I'll just hold it all the time. Well, you can try to hold it all the time, but you'll find that the habit of never doing that makes it difficult to establish in you at first, because other things push it out. Particularly things like, that bastard has really pissed me off today, and I'm going to just hate on that all day long. Forgot our anniversary again for the 25th time. So we do that. We fill up with stuff that's other than that. So I'm just making the distinction in this particular short podcast, because I'm going to end it now, for you to look at love and wisdom. And this whole purpose of the Love Foundry is to empower yourself with love in such a way that all actions in the rest of your life, every act of will you take, and every bit of intelligence that you fill that action with, will have love as an automatic impact through you on other things. And if you think for 1 second that's not going to have a tremendous impact on your life, then guess again. It will have a miraculous impact. And it will cause so much disturbance in you when other things flood up in you that you want to, that bastard just cut you off in traffic and you're busy hating on that guy down the road. And then you think, oh, yeah, that's right. I was going to spend the whole day doing love until that bastard cut me off in traffic. So that's part of what we have to have fun with. We have to have a joy at doing this, because love is joyful, and it will raise your life into a joyful frequency that nothing can touch. But what'll kill you is how quickly some stupid thing can take that joy away. And that guy cut you off, didn't even know he did it. He was thinking about something else and pulled his car over into that lane. And there you were right behind him, 3 feet. And he went, oh, shit, there's somebody. And he's thinking to himself, he lost love too, because he's thinking to himself, shit, I just screwed up that person's life. I nearly killed myself. I haven't even got my insurance paid up. He's thinking about all of that while he's going down the road. And you're thinking, that bastard, it's a good thing I don't have that gun in the glove compartment like I used to, because I would have shot him. So, this is us. This is human beings. And those are comedy things, but they're not comedy things. Road rage is real. Confusion and mistake is real. Losing your grip on love, even though you're holding it tightly. Right now, you pull it down. You think, I'm really flooding with this right now. That's just fantastic. There it went. Gone. But at a certain point, love will pick you up, because you've committed yourself to it. You've demonstrated a certain commitment to that energy, and it's created a certain break in the habits and patterns in you. And that you begin to feel the joy of love itself. Life itself is filled with nothing but love. Therefore, it's filled with nothing but joy, ecstasy, and happiness. Those are all things that just flood out of love. So you're going to have that. If you empower yourself with it, it's going to eventually just get rid of the rest. So it's not an effort at that point. At that point, you have a sense of serenity. You can't let someone steal your peace, steal your sense of connection to the wholeness of love. And then we begin to see what love gives us, the gifts of love. Boy, it's got some fantastic gifts within it that bring us into realizations of other beings and the joy of having their coexistence with us in the universe, and the realizations that hatred and evil and harm and those negative things are just simply the absence of love. If we take love out of us by being abused and beat up and convinced to hate, then it's absent in us, in our consciousness, which never can take it out of your body or out of your being. And you can never lose your right to it. Your free will is your ticket in. Act on your free will, and love will never refuse you, never abandon you, never reject you.
Jack Rafferty.
Thank you, everyone.